Hey everyone, Dr. Funkenstein here. In this video, I'll be going over my top 5 favorite ground vehicles in War Thunder. This is a part of a series of likely 4 videos that I'll be releasing with my top 5 liked and disliked tanks and planes as part of my 25,000 subscriber celebration. As I said in my previous video, I want to thank you all so much for helping me reach that mark. That said, this video will be a bit less inflammatory as a ton of people took great offense to me not loving the IS-2 and M60A2, being that they just don't fit my playstyle. To each his own, I guess. Also, I may do a Q&A as part of my next video or for an entire video, so let me know what you guys think if you have any questions for me specifically. They could be anything such as what my favorite band is, how tall I am, the coolest car I've ever owned, my favorite game of all time, my favorite video game intro of all time, what my favorite drink is, anything. It could be anything. Oh, it could also be about War Thunder too, but that's up to you if you even want to ask me any questions. So, some ground rules for this video. I've considered only regular tech tree vehicles for this list, although this includes all types of ground vehicles from every nation and VR outside of 1.0 and Reserve. This is a much easier list for me as I have very few tanks that I dislike, but I have a good amount of tanks that I love. So these are my favorite of my favorite tanks. That said, let's get into it. So for my number 5 on this list, and this is something you'll probably notice a little bit of a trend on my list, the Tiger H. I love this vehicle, and really you could say any of the Tiger 1s, but I specifically mean the Tiger H and also kind of the Tiger Camo Tiger because these are both 5.3 BR Tigers and they're both Tiger H's. Now, the reason why I love the Tiger H so much is because it has an awesome cannon, it's got great penetration values on the stock ammo, awesome post-pen damage, and incredible accuracy. In my opinion, it's one of the best cannons in War Thunder relative to BR. It's also got good armor when angled, and I suggest that you check out both my angling guide and my Tiger 1 guide, both of which I link below in the pinned comment. I've actually done guides for this tank in particular, so it tells you how much I really like it. Third, it has good speed and acceleration, even despite its massive weight. I mean, also, as I kind of alluded, you could really group any vehicle into this category of Tiger 1, so it doesn't matter if it's Tiger H, E, whatever. Even the heavy tank number 6, as that's essentially an early Tiger E, which itself is kind of like a halfway point between the H and the E and the German tech tree. I've played every single type of Tiger 1 in-game, whether it's the Panzer Befehlsfalken 6P, which I have a review of, the VK4501P, which I actually won in like a really early Operation Summer, if I'm not mistaken, the heavy tank number 6, which I also own, the Tiger painted camo Tiger, the H, the E. I love them all, and I've played matches in all of them. This is easily one of my favorite tanks, and honestly, the amount that I love this thing, I'm almost kind of surprised that it's not number 1, but it tells you how much I love all the other tanks in this list. Which brings me to my number 4 selection, and this one might shock a lot of people, but another thing that you will notice is that a lot of these vehicles on this list are fairly heavy. And my number 4 is the M6A1. That's right, the heavy tank for the American tech tree, currently sitting at 4.7 BR. This is a multi-cannon beast. The 37mm cannon on it can still pen or at very least disable enemies at this BR, especially if you destroy their tracks. It's a really useful secondary armament. But more importantly, it's got a very strong main cannon. Not only can it pen and one-shot most enemies up through 5.3 or even 5.7 BR with ease, but it also has an amazing reload that can be as low as 5.9 seconds depending on crew's skill. I love it so much. Third, has good armor when angling and can bounce shells. Fourth, it actually has a fairly decent top speed considering what it is, as well as good acceleration, though you won't ever be moving much faster than 30 kilometers per hour, but realistically speaking, it's not all too bad. It even has really good cross-country speed. I also love the M6A1's excellent gun depression and elevation. This thing also has a 6-man crew as well as a large spacious interior, both of which makes this tank more survivable when compared to similar BR tanks. But it does have a huge size. I mean, it's one of the biggest tanks in game, which is a major liability and not really a ton of armor when considering the sides and the rear of the tank. And also, its reverse speed is pretty much booty chatter. Honestly, guys, I don't know what it is. You will find tons of hate for the M6A1 from almost everyone online, but for me, I love it. It's just a winning combination of decent speed, good armor, and a great cannon, which are things that I love. And now for the number 3 spot on this list, and as I said before, there is a bit of a trend, and you'll probably probably notice it, if not here, a little bit later in this list. But for my number 3, we have the Tiger 2H. And really, you could put any of the Tiger 2s in this spot, whether it's the P, the H, the SLA16, the 10.5. I love them all much the same way that I love the Tiger 1 in all of its variants. Now, the difference here is that the Tiger 2H, specifically in my opinion, is by far the best version relative to BR, while still being in the regular tech tree, whereas the 10.5 is no longer available, unfortunately. And also the SLA16 is a premium, which I have a review for if you'd like. I'll probably link that in the pinned comment below, if of course I remember to link that. Now, more importantly, let's go over why I love the Tiger 2H so much. Specifically, again, the H being that this is, in my opinion, the best vehicle relative to BR. Better at 6.7 than the 2P is at 6.3. Now, that said, the 2H has awesome frontal glacis armor and also awesome frontal turret armor, even again when considering its 6.7 BR. It also follows the trend of its predecessor, the Tiger 1. The cannon on this vehicle is not only incredibly powerful, featuring 237mm of armor pen with stock shell at max, but is also incredibly accurate, being one of the best heavy snipers in War Thunder. Additionally, it has an excellent reload speed with the possibility to be as low as 7.5 seconds, which for an 88mm cannon with this much accuracy and this much armor pen, in my opinion, is absolutely incredible. I mean, you could theoretically take a Tiger 2H into an MBT game and actually get a few kills with it with smart positioning. Now, not only this, but it is fairly mobile, especially if you include the Tiger 2 SLA16 and the Tiger 2 10.5. And if I haven't already alluded to it, this is another one of those vehicles that I actually have made a guide for, being that I love this vehicle so much. Again, it's linked with the other guides that I mentioned in this video in the pinned comment below, so check them out. But as kind of a final note for the Tiger 2, I mean, look at this thing. It's just such a beautiful tank. In my opinion, one of the coolest looking tanks built in World War II, possibly ever built, even if it was built for a pretty awful regime. And now for my number 2 spot on this list, the T-54, specifically the 1949. Now, this is the best blend of armor, ammunition, and BR of all standard T-54s, in my opinion, in War Thunder. Many people, myself included, would prefer the APDS on this over the Heat FS that the 1951 has, and you get at 0.4 BR lower, which is really nice, and it's something that might not stay forever, but who knows. Now, speaking of armor, this is one of those vehicles that many people that have little experience in fighting it will have a very difficult time finding weak spots, which has led to a ton of bounce shots, which makes me a very happy T-54 player. Also, it's actually quite small, being only around about an 85% visibility rating, which is really nice. And it also has a very low profile, which means that you could be able to put tons of foliage on this and just sneak around the sides of maps very easily. It also has a very powerful HMG mounted on top, which is awesome for destroying lightly armored vehicles or aircraft, and it has a good power to weight ratio and a good top speed, making this a fairly mobile tank, especially when compared to contemporaries and similar BR vehicles. But of course, there are some faults. It does have a mediocre turret traverse and gun depression. Now, to be honest with you guys, I will find myself only playing T-54s in around 7.7 BR matches, and oftentimes I will actually start the match off. So I tend to start the match off with my best vehicle or the highest BR vehicle, but I will start it off with the T-54 1949 over the 51, or I believe it's the 47 if I'm not mistaken. It's just such a great vehicle in my opinion, and again, truly is the best blend of armor, ammunition, and BR. I really don't know why this is a 7.3 BR, whereas the older version of the T-54 is a 7.7 BR vehicle. It just really makes no sense to me. But with that said, there are a few vehicles that I feel like should be honorable mentions. As I always do with my top 5 lists, I try to have honorable mentions, and this is no different. So first and foremost, another Russian tank. We have the IS-1, and now a lot of people might be asking me why I love the IS-1 and not the IS-2. Again, as I said before in the comments to my previous video that got a lot of people ticked off, it boils down to playstyle. This has the same armor, but weighs slightly less, and has around 1/3 the reload time. Also has better cannon depression, and is still a perfectly potent cannon, all while being at 5.3 BR. For me, that's a winning combination. This is pretty much a heavy T-34-85, and I love me some T-34-85. It's just a really good tank and destroys the biggest weak spot, again in my opinion, the biggest weak point I mean to say, of the IS-2, which is the ridiculous reload. And though it does sacrifice quite a bit of armor pen, guess what? I get to make up for it with knowledge of the game because I actually know where weak spots are, and I it has still a perfectly potent cannon that should be able to pen through pretty much everywhere that I aim. Again, knowing the weak spots of enemy tanks in general. And now for my number 2 spot, we have the T95E1. This might take a few people by surprise, understandably so, but for an 8.0 BR American medium tank, this thing is the cat's pajamas, guys. I mean, I absolutely love it. And the first time I ever used it, I mean, I was kind of blown away by it. It's just such a fun tank, and it was one of the most fun tanks that I had to try to get fully spaded. So it's got good armor, great speed, great turret traverse, like surprisingly good turret traverse. It's got a very good cannon with very good ammunition, at least relative to BR. So the ammunition has an extremely high velocity. I believe it's over 1500 meters per second, being APF SDS, and it only has 300 millimeters of armor pen, which is actually about the same as the T-54 1949's APDS. Now, again, 300 millimeters of armor pen at this BR, especially for APF SDS, is pretty darn good, but when compared to other APF SDS, it's not really all that good, but it does certainly get the job done, at least in my experience. Now, when it comes to the downside of this, it's a very large tank, and it also has a middling reload. It is what it is, but in my opinion, just for something that I can get in and get out of combat with, it's really one of my favorite tanks in game, and it almost had a spot on my top 5 list. And also, this is kind of like a second class honorable mention, so like an honorable mentions, and it is the Char 25T. And I love this vehicle so much, and I didn't mention any light tanks in the rest of this list, but the Char 25T is a really fun tank. The light tank lineup around 7.0, 7.3 BR in the French tech tree is absolutely bonkers. I suggest everyone get to that point in the lineup. It's not incredibly difficult to get to, especially with premium time. It's just absolutely fantastic, and the Char 25T is about as good as you'll get, especially as far as French light tanks are concerned. Really fun vehicle, but of course it does have many weaknesses, but an extremely fun vehicle nonetheless. And now for the moment you've all been waiting for, my number 1 spot. And as I said before, there is a bit of a trend on this list, and that number 1 spot goes to the Panther, specifically the Panther D, being my favorite when primarily considering BR, which is what I really consider when looking at a lot of my favorites, and also you could say the Panther A when equally considering capability and BR. Simply put, the Panther tanks are just amazing to me. They have incredible cannons shooting around 200 millimeters of armor pen at max. They're incredibly accurate, have a pretty good reload. Not quite as good as the Tiger II, but still really good. It's just overall very mobile. You can fire on the go. They look awesome. I mean, what's not to love? The Panther tanks are just, it's like the T-34, except just way better in my opinion. And I remember when Gaijin first put the Panther down to 5.3 BR, I was blown away. I thought, how could they do this? The Panther is just, it's one of the best cannons in game at that BR, and they put it down to 5.3. And I have my suspicions. I'm not sure if a lot of people who have no idea how to play this game just jump to Germany because they think that the vehicles are so cool, and then it wrecks the various BRs that these vehicles would operate at. Whereas if these were piloted by relatively capable players, then maybe the BRs would go up. I mean, the win rates for German planes or German players, they're pretty low, pretty much at all BRs. I actually just recently saw a chart for that, which might explain why the Panther D is 5.3. Although it does have a very poor turret traverse. It's something like 4 or 5 degrees per second in realistic, whereas the Panther A is closer to around 20 or 22 degrees per second. And it also has a better power to weight ratio and really all that. So either way you slice it, the Panther D, the Panther A, I love them both. I used to love the Panther F because it has a slightly better reload compared to the other Panthers, but they also just moved that up to 6.0 and then took the Panther G down from 6.0 and put that down to 5.7. So either way you slice it, the Panthers are my favorite tanks in game, bar none. I love them, and I also love them so much that, you guessed it, I have a guide for them linked in the pinned comment below, so definitely check that out. It's one of my most popular guides, and if you guys want a glimpse on how not only I played the Panther, but how I've had a lot of success with the Panther tanks, that is the guide to do it. I mention every Panther tank in game, go over all the differences, you name it, I have it. It's all in that guide below. But that being said, thanks so much for watching, everyone. Please like, comment, subscribe, you know the dealio. It all means a ton to me. Thank you so much for getting me to 25,000 subscribers. I can't believe it. 2 years ago when I really first started really going for this channel, I remember sitting down and looking, I'm like, man, if I could get to 5,000 subscribers, that would be amazing. And lo and behold, here I am at 25,000. So it's 5 times more than what I thought would be amazing. So this is 5 times amazing, and again, it means the world to me. Let me know some comments, some questions that you guys might have for me in the comments below. Be more than happy to either make a separate video for that or include it as part of a regular video. But again, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you all on the other side. Take care, everyone.